As real estate investors, we are always looking to make an impact, but are we doing that with our properties? Today's guest is Jon Weiskopf, and he talks about how he's investing to make an impact, controlling the things he can control. If you want to learn how to make an impact, you want to check out our conversation with Jon. He talks about controlling the things that we can control, like utility costs and investing in more sustainable materials, not just because it's the cool thing to do or the green thing to do, but because it actually drives profits. So if you are looking to make an impact and profits, be sure to check out today's conversation right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to the show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Jon Weiskopf is the founder and CEO of Blue Eyed Capital, a purpose-driven investment firm helping people co-invest in high-performing real estate that delivers both financial returns and meaningful impact. Let's welcome to the show, Jon Weiskopf.
John, thank you so much. Happy to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jon, I went over your bio and background at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure, man. I'm an engineer. Started my career 20 years ago, wanting to be a race car engineer for Ferrari. It didn't work out. Got a job designing building systems, HVAC, power, all of that stuff. And my career took me to New York City, where I learned most of my trade by the people that actually built buildings and actually did the hard work. And about 10 years into my career, got a call from Apple. And they asked me to come out and interview for them, and I got the job, and I led the engineering team for their retail real estate development group for about 10 years. Traveled the world, got to build, I think, in over 20 countries or so. And it got to a point where I was, well, probably like many of us that are searching for something different, burned out. I had just become a father and looking for something more meaningful in my life. I went to an investment conference or a single day event, and I looked around the room, and all these people were talking about their journey into real estate and what they were doing. And I noticed something; it just stuck with me. I was like, none of these people came from real estate. And so I kind of just had this dawning, I don't know, just realization. I'm like, okay, hold on. I've been in real estate for 20 years. I know everything that there is to know about buildings, built all different kinds. Hey, what has taken me so freaking long to get here or to think about investing? But man, I think I can be really good at this, right? Like this could be my value add. I know the buildings. And so went home, told my wife I was quitting. She kind of looked at me like, you're crazy. You make a lot of money. Why? And I said, well, we'll do more and we'll do better. And I, led me to Blue Eyed Capital. It's named after my wife and son. And now my daughter, who luckily enough, about a year old and also has blue eyes. So I got kind of lucky there.
I love it, man. I love it. You talked about being an engineer, man. You started off wanting to build Ferraris, and that didn't necessarily come to fruition, but you started off working in HVAC systems and designing other things. Ultimately, starting to work with Apple, and if I understand correctly, you were designing kind of or helping engineer launching some of their flagship stores, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So you're out there launching flagship stores, and one day you're at this conference, you're looking around the room, realize none of these people actually came from real estate. You had been building these structures all over the world, had all this built in, 20 years of built in knowledge of real estate, and just wanted to bring that to the light. So that's kind of your advantage in the marketplace is you came from it, naming the company after your family or your kids and your wife, and just kind of keeping that near and dear to the heart. You mentioned the burnout, which is something so many people face, right? Especially when you get kind of that mid-career phase. I know a lot of the folks that I talk to, friends and just investors in general, I don't know what it is, man, but something about late 30s, early 40s, um, start reflecting on where you're at, where you're going. And a lot of people start to think about their career and what they want to do next. And that's where these conversations really, really start to get traction. For you, sounds like you had a lot of success from a financial standpoint, and obviously you're building these flagship stores. So I'm sure there had to be some fulfillment from a career standpoint there. What do you think was the gap that you were trying to fill?
Uh, 100-hour work weeks, stress, um, taking every problem home with me, was kind of that breaking point. It was right at the beginning of COVID when my wife and I had our first child. And so I was home all the time. And so that stress, that frustration, that just no longer really enjoying what I was doing anymore. And I looked around and I kind of just looked at my son and I just thought to myself, like, is one, this isn't a dad that he needs. I lost my dad when I was very young, so I didn't really grow up with a father. But it was also, what am I doing with all the skills that I have? Am I actually doing something that's good? You read my bio and impact. I'm very much into sustainability, very big into helping those around us. And it's not a charity. It's I have the capabilities to do stuff. I want my kids to know that their dad did everything possible to kind of help the world. We live in a world together. We are not individuals that live by ourselves in a cocoon, right? And I just kind of had this dawn, like, can I use my skills for better? Right? Nobody needs more Apple stores. There's a lot of them. It was great. Trust me. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, first class plane tickets. I got great meals, great hotels. Saw the world. Designed and engineered stuff that most never get a chance to because of the big pocketbooks. But it still left me kind of wondering, I can't do this for another 20. And now I control my schedule, right?
That's
My
a big
son's got off
difference.
on Friday. Yeah, my son's got off on Friday. Guess what? Dad's got off on Friday.
Yeah, yeah. I love you to hear you say that because it's easy just to fast forward and jump straight into real estate. But I think the thing that's important here is understand the why. And you talked about, losing your father at an early age, and you were working 100-hour work weeks. And yes, you were making good money and seeing the world and traveling and all those kind of things. But there's a greater purpose. And you talked about living in this world and sustainability and how important this was to you and being a good example for your children. And that's something I know resonates with a lot of people because, if you're making good money, but you're not able to control where you're at or who you're with or when you want to be there, that can hurt. And I know for me, that was one of the things that started me down this path was traveling, working a lot. You know, I remember my son had maybe his second or third birthday, and I had to be on set for a shoot, a TV shoot, and I was just miserable. I was so mad. And for me, and this may be part of your story too, I was mad because I realized two of the values that I hold nearest and dearest to myself as far as who I am and who I think I am, they came in direct conflict. Being a dependable, reliable, hard worker, somebody that you can trust. That was something I prided myself on, from, almost being a young kid, definitely as a teenager, but on the flip side of that, being a present father, being someone who could be there for my kids. And, I mean, we joke right before we record, my kids are in the other room right now, so just made lunch for them, ran a little bit over. When you and I wrap, I'm going to go back out there with them, probably throw the ball around and, they got today off. So we'll hang out. Right. And those are two things that I pride myself on. Right. When I look in the mirror when no one else is around, like, if you were to ask me, or if I ask myself, who am I? Those are probably two things that I could say. Well, they came in direct conflict. And I you always have a choice. We tell ourselves sometimes we don't have a choice, but you always have a choice. And I clearly chose work. And it just ate at me the entire time. And I was miserable. I've never been this miserable before, but I was just miserable. And it took me maybe a couple of months to realize the why. And it was the acknowledgement that that priority that I had was not the priority that I chose. And there were other options. They may not have been great options, but there were other options, and I didn't choose those. And I know that ate at me, but it also started me down this journey. For you, was there a moment that triggered it where you said, you know what? I know you talked about sitting in that room, but was there something else that triggered, say, this is it. I can't do this crap anymore.
Um, I I I I had been struggling, depression, right? I mean, just I would wake up, open my computer, do nothing else, and I'm a healthy guy and all that stuff, and everything was just falling apart for me. My wife and my best friend pushed me and pushed me and pushed me to take a leave of absence from Apple. And I talk about that real estate class I did. I took 3 months off, um, and I will tell you that the very first day, right? Friday is when I put my notice in. I called my boss. I said I'm taking a leave. Saturday, the amount of stress that unloaded off of me was just unlimited, right? And the first month, I kind of did things around the house and projects that I needed to do. And then I was kind of sitting there like, man, I've got to do something for myself. And I started getting out there. I started reading different books and stumbled upon this class and started hiking. And I went back to Apple after 3 months and I was a whole new person. I'd already started Blue Ocean Capital in the background. I knew I was starting to build something else, but I got back in there and I just looked around the room. And for the first time, I saw the stress on everybody else
Mm,
and I had none of it.
mm,
And I was like, oh my God, that was me running around because a new meeting just popped up on the calendar and everybody's got to drop their lives for in this. And I was the one that put work first. I would get phone calls, Apple being a global company, would get phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning, answer it, get up, talk, what's, you know what I mean? And everything came first. But it was that instance when I got back and I don't talk bad about Apple because it formed a lot of what I know and a lot of the strength and the confidence that I had in myself. Right. So the 9 or 10 years that I had there transformed who I was, gave me a lot of what I can use today. But man, I got back and I said, oh, I'm never letting that stress come on. Now, I probably work a lot more now, maybe not 100 hours a week, but I probably work a heck of a lot more now than I did before. But now my work, I think the funniest thing is, John, and the most amazing thing that allows me to keep going, you work in a corporate America, a lot of things you do end up going nowhere. Not a lot of us are CEOs in corporate America. Not a lot of us are extra, the senior director, all these things that get to make all the decisions. Now, I had a lot of decision making power in my role, but even there was still a plateau, right? There was still an edge where somebody had to agree with me, and a lot of times people didn't, and there was always friction. That's corporate, right? Now I get to make the decisions. I make sometimes they're wrong, sometimes wrong. Made a bad one last week, right? But I actually see things. And it's that growth. And sure, maybe 20 years ago in the beginning of my career, I got to see myself change faster because I was learning new jobs and new skills and all that stuff. But that reinvigoration. Now look, my salary is nothing what it used to be. Um, but that building of stuff, that having the ability to just, you know what, today I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna see if this works. And I don't got anybody that can tell me no. That it's life altering. Um,
Well,
now I
John,
gotta say one thing though, because I think this is important for everybody out there. I have a wife that is very successful, that works very hard, and gave me the chance to do this. Right, gave me the chance to quit cold turkey and try to start a business. So it's not all just myself. Go ahead. Sorry.
John, and I'm glad you gave that distinction here because it sounds like we have very similar stories. It was similar with us, where my wife and I are both working, both doing well in our careers. But as we started to build up our portfolio, I decided to go ahead and make that leap because she kind of had a nice, W-2 role and was doing well. And, it kind of gave me the freedom to dream, right? And to explore those dreams and see what can happen. It's great to have that. Shout out to all the beautiful wives and spouses and partners out there in the
Yeah.
world. Um, One thing you said though, you talked about just the hours and the working, and you may even work more hours now, but it's different because so many things die in corporate. And I can tell you, man, that was the thing that really would get at me is you stay up late to do a pitch or to work on an idea, and you have an entire team of people who are just putting in hours and putting their soul into this work, just to have it get shot down or put on the shelf for no real reason, and all that work just goes for naught. And I know for me it just got I don't know if depressing is the right word, but I would say it really started to impact my level of excitement for the work because I would almost become skeptical of anything I did. Like, what's the point? There's a 50% chance it's going to die before we get to round one.
Yep.
So whatever, just get it done. It's good enough. Let's move, and it becomes a numbers game as opposed to trying to do the quality that we used to put into the effort. And I don't say we. I'll talk for myself. But the thing with being an entrepreneur is different, and this is, I think, the really important thing because when you work for a large corporation, and I was working in the automotive industry, I was working in the beer industry, so lots of people had to, get approvals. But as an entrepreneur, everything matters. We didn't do stuff just to do it, right? Like anything we were doing, we expected something to come of it. Now, I'm not saying everything was going to be earth shattering, but everything we do, it's with some sort of intentionality. And I love that aspect of it because it's not just throwing out ideas just to see what someone else thinks about it. You're trying. And that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. And I just say that because I know a lot of people are going through this emotionally, right? Where you're in your career. And a lot of times people turn to real estate because they think it's a great vehicle to create financial flexibility. And it absolutely is. However, a lot of times the reason you're looking for this may not have anything to do with money, right? Because you could just like, let me just stop caring about my job and I'll be fine, which is probably not a great idea. But you've got to figure out too the inner work. If there's something else going on in your personal life or something else going on that you're dealing with, you know, real estate investing can be problematic and challenging. It's not necessarily the great solution if it's an emotional challenge that you're trying to solve, right? Financially, absolutely. Emotionally, not so much. Let's talk about Blue Eyed Capital. You're sitting in that room, you realize you've got 20 years of experience where a lot of the other folks don't have that experience. What's the next step to turn this into Blue Eyed Capital?
Um, God, it sounds kind of silly. I just started an LLC.
There you go.
And I mean, honestly,
Very
it
practical.
sounds so
Step one,
silly, right?
open
You
LLC.
know, yeah, open an LLC, right? I mean, but I started going to online meetings. I did join a mastermind. Um, I will say in a little way, I kind of regret the mastermind a little bit. I think I needed the push. I think I needed something behind me to maybe tell me that I could do this. But I got in and quickly realized that most of what I was learning I had already known. Um, that's not for everybody. So, please, we're all different. We all kind of go our own way. It took me the first 6 months to really figure out what it was I wanted to do. And, impact is a big thing for me. And I tried very hard, interestingly enough, early on to avoid it. And I found myself sitting in networking calls or reviewing deals and with partners or potential partners. And nobody really wanted to talk about the stuff I wanted to talk about. And I got to that point, like, well, this is not really interesting to me. I don't want to just buy a building to just buy a building and pop up rents and sell it 3 years later. Like I want bigger stuff. I want to do more. I want to help more. I want to be more. Um, so that 6 months kind of took me of kind of just being in the masses and really listening to my inner brain or inner soul and hearing it saying, if you don't niche, this is going to go nowhere and you're going to burn yourself out fast, right? Because you're never going to do what you actually set out to do. Um, Now I'm in the impact space or dedicated to it. Find it very hard because there's not a lot of people in it and there's a lot of more things to do with it. That's kind of how I started. I kind of just did it. I don't know.
Yeah, and John, what you're getting at is really, your approach to investing. And this is the beauty of investing, particularly with real estate. There's so many different strategies that, you can have a completely different skill set and be successful. You and I could both be real estate investors and actually do nothing that's similar other than there's a piece of real estate involved to some capacity, right? So
Yeah.
most of our listeners are familiar with kind of value add multifamily investing. We have a lot of guests that talk about that. Your strategy is a little bit different when you talk about the impact. Tell us exactly what it is that you do and what your focus is.
Sure. So impact is really trying to achieve both financial and environmental and social outcomes along with my returns, right? So all it means is that I have a purpose for what I'm doing. My purpose is to go buy C class properties, ones that maybe are run down, maybe that need value add. But my value add is is also taking into consideration how does it impact the social and economic demographic that my building is serving, right? How do I look at my building and say, well, this is a 30-year, 40-year-old asset. Um, it's run down. It has old air conditioning equipment. It has old lighting. What can I do to improve it, both for longevity, but also resiliency and sustainability? Um, I'm probably one of the more unique people when it comes to impact. Is I think a lot of this stuff is good business, and so I'm going to challenge your listeners to, whether you like the word sustainability or not, like whether you like the word impact or not, there are a lot of things that are happening in our country today, around the world. Some of them are social, some of those are financial. If you read any of the charts out there, a lot of us look at rents and we focus on how much rent can I get. I have operated buildings for 20 years. I will tell you the money is not in rent. The money is in how well you can operate a building. Because you can make $3,000 a month in rent, but if you don't take care of that building, it doesn't matter what you made in rent, it will be depleted quick. And so I kind of look at different metrics. And what I recommend everybody to look at, and this goes for active and passive investors, is utility rates. Now, a lot of people will pass down utility rates to their apartment renters. Sure, you can do that. I actually recommend it. As utility rates rise and the cost of living for any renter goes up, what starts to get impacted? It costs more for somebody to pay utilities. It costs more for somebody to buy food. How much is left over? Left over for what? Your rent. Car payments go up. How much is left over? Rent. So depending on where your demographic is, and I'm a C class property, so those are more lower to middle income residents, right? Somebody making anywhere from 40 nowadays, I don't know, even 100,000 is people are struggling, right? You have to understand what those people, where their income comes from and what it then goes to, right? People need a car to get to work. That's the first payment they're going to make, because without a car, without a job, they have no money. Then it goes to food. If you're a parent, you're a person, you need food. Then comes rent. And so the way I try to ask people to look at impact is, it's not charity, right? It's about looking at things more holistically and saying, well, what is my real business plan? And how are these individuals going to pay? And what could I do to actually help those individuals pay me better and more consistently? And by doing that, you create a renter that is more stable. You create a property, an asset that's more stable. You create a business that can last longer than the person next to you.
John, you talked about the operations is really the key performance indicator you're paying attention to, not necessarily rents. Certainly rents help, but it's those utility rates that you got your eye on, because at the end of the day, there's only so much discretionary income, particularly when you're talking about the residents who live in C class properties. They don't have the money just to throw all around for whatever else. And every rent increase, every car payment increase, interest rate hike, all those things impact them a little bit harder because there's less discretionary income going around. So to your point, when you're looking at your business plan and your ability to execute, you have to look at more than just rents. And this is something I'm seeing with a lot of folks who play in this space, where they thought they could push rents, 20% or 10% or whatever it is, and they're not able to do that today. Their business plan pretty much went out the window because people are not taking these rent hikes the way they were. And you're talking about looking at it more holistically with the overall property impact. How's it performing? What can people pay? How do we make it more efficient? Those are the things you're paying attention to. So to take it out of kind of the fluffy area there with the good intention, what you're getting at is improving the property so that the operations are more efficient, not necessarily just rent. Can you just shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah. We always talk about, or there's all these things out there, right? Worry about what you can control. I beg to differ, or beg to argue here, that most property owners, if not all of them, cannot control rent prices. and do not control rent prices. A market shifts and the property next to you starts lowering rent because they need it for whatever reason they need it, you're impacted. You cannot charge more than the person next to you if you guys have similar, if you have similar assets, right? So that rent, I just look at it and say it's not really out of my control. I can't predict the future. I can't say that rents are going to keep going up. I know utilities are going to keep going up because I know that the infrastructure in our country is aging, that we are running out of power, that the cost to bring more power online in our country is getting more and more expensive every year, and that utility companies, that stuff is a pass down expense, right? So I know it's going up. So what can I do to mitigate those things? I can be more energy efficient, right? Um, People look at energy efficiency, and a lot of folks look at things like, well, it's going to cost me X amount of money today. Energy efficiency and solar power or any renewable energy is one of the only building upgrades you can do that is going to earn you more money year over year. Think about this. Your HVAC is dying and you put in a more efficient one today. As utility rates go up, you earn a bigger margin, or you save a bigger margin year over year over year. You put solar panels on your property today and you make power. Maybe it's 50 cents today. The country's average went up 5% last year. Most underwriters underwrite 3%. There are some states and some cities that have gone up 20% in 1 year. So if you look at these margins and you look at utility rates going up, well, if utility rates keep going up and you're making your own power, guess who starts to make more income? Got to look at, it's just looking at things differently, right? And so going back to that, what we can control and what we can't, right? I can't control everything. I can't control the price of labor and the price of lumber and all those things. But if I control my operations, if I see where things are breaking, then even if rents don't go up as much, well, if I can control my operations and my expenses steady, then sure, fine. Maybe year over year, my income overall, my net operating income didn't go up. But heck, if I can keep it from not going down, in certain instances, I'm going to call that a win, right? Especially in today's marketplace. So again, it's really just looking at is what can you control, what's out of my control, and what ultimately is going to hurt me the most, and how can I mitigate that?
John, when you're
One last, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, when you're looking at properties, how do you decide whether or not a property is right for this kind of a business plan? Are you looking specifically for properties with dated systems, or how do you approach that?
Um, my buy box changes a little bit, right? My portfolio is not meant to be all these heavy value add, heavy renovation type ones, right? That's draining, that's difficult, and bound to cause headaches somewhere. No construction project goes off without a hitch. None of them do. Um, I'm looking for ones where somebody has maintained a building fairly well, but hasn't seen the need to really take the next step. Air conditioning, equipment 15 years old. Air conditionings aren't all that expensive these days. That's a simple, fast, easy win. And can I get a discounted price on that property because I can show, look, you haven't touched anything in 20 years. Come on, right? I'm going to come in. These are all going to die in the next couple of years anyway. I'm surprised they haven't died yet. How can I mark down that price, that purchase price a little bit, get that owner to understand it? Either you sell it to me or you're going to start paying for these. These things are going to start dropping off, right? I don't mind a heavy value add, but I don't love them unless the price is really right and it really makes sense. It's always you need good bones. A building with bad bones, it's not, you're knocking it down. But you have to be cognizant, right? Have the right people. I'm lucky I'm an engineer. I understand the components of buildings and what they should be and where they most likely are based on the age and when they were built. But anybody can go hire or bring on somebody that has that same skill to give them an idea of what it takes. So I think, John, it's really about going in there with eyes wide open and fully understanding, well, it looks fine. It looks good. Yeah, let's just buy it. You know, plumbing. plumbing breaks, plumbing ages. You don't scope those plumbing lines. Like that's a no-no for me. But I will never buy a property without looking through those plumbing lines. Right? And I walked away from a property. The owner refused to change it. I showed him, you have a break in your plumbing line. This is going to cost me $500,000 to fix. And that's when I know about it, right? You have a broken plumbing line and that sewage backs up into a property. Guess what? You're evacuating a property and moving people to hotel rooms. That stuff, that's money. That's $1 million after moving people out, right? So, you know, I don't like the heavy ones, but I'm not afraid to buy things older than 1970. But again, it's knowing what I'm about to buy, knowing what the prices it's going to get me, and if I can buy it right and put in capex and still have room left over and equity left over, you know, value left over, it's a win. Um, I will tell you the one thing that I'm looking for more and more now these days, after you know a couple years into this, stuff that's closer to me. Is probably the biggest thing that I would say for anybody, especially if you're somebody that's in charge of the asset management or really part of that team. Um, if the closer to you things go wrong. So
Yeah. And John, you're up in Wisconsin, right?
yeah,
What part?
I'm in the Upper Peninsula,
Yeah.
so a little county called Door County.
Okay. Which makes sense, right? So when you talk about properties close to you, especially if you're in a smaller area or
I'm not,
area where it's
it's
harder
hard
to
to travel.
travel and get to,
Yeah,
you can't be there right away. So it definitely makes sense to find
yeah,
properties that are closer to you. But what I'm hearing you say is, you're looking at value add just a little bit differently. You're looking at the things you can't control, which is more about the property and its operations. And I think that to ladder this up a little bit more, really comes down to your business plan. I know a lot of times people put together their criteria for a property and it's just stuff they hear guys like you and I regurgitate, but they're not necessarily thinking of what makes sense for them. And the age of the asset, yes, it matters to an extent, but the finish is all of that, it all comes down to your business plan. In your case, you know you can replace the air conditioners at a pretty good price and get a nice return on that. So you're fine buying properties with, older AC units or those, in window units because you know you're going to plan and upgrade that. Ultimately, as investors, that's our job. Our role is to come in and figure out what our business plan is going to be for a property and to make sure we take care of it without missing the big ticket items, right? You talked about the sewage lines and make sure you get those plumbing lines scoped because you don't want to find a big ticket item and have that surprise hit you while you're owning an asset. Even worse, you don't want to do everything and run into a situation where you run out of money and then this thing happens or it's not covered by insurance or there's so many other things that happen. And as an operator, that's one of your biggest jobs is to figure out those things because a limited partner, they typically aren't thinking about that and they're really entrusting you to do that. So great question and great thought process. It's something we all need to just keep in mind is, hey, what is your business plan for the property? Make sure you're properly vetting the property and understand the condition that it's in. John, as you kind of reflect on the last few years of building up your portfolio, what's one thing you know now that you wish you would have known when you started?
Mm. Capital racing is hard. um, you know, for the active folks out there, the folks that wanting to be active, don't underestimate how hard it is to find capital. Even the best plans, even the best investments. Um, be prepared, have excess, have a network that has excess or people that can help you get excess. I have in the past 2 years, three of my acquisitions um, have seen, money not come through. Somebody commit and not come through, right? And so it's last minute scrambles. Um, Lending is always the tough one. Backup lenders. I do a lot of private lending. It's another kind of piece of my business. Blue Eyed Finance. We do a lot of hard money lending and things like that for commercial assets. Um, that people banks leave, banks ghost, banks don't show up. Banks keep coming in with more and more things. So having those that Rolodex of people, or that backup lender, or that backup funding source. I'm about to close on a $300,000 gap loan for somebody. Their deal's taken longer than possible. It's a great deal, amazing deal. Their LP investor is the city of Denver. But things have taken so long. Their first lender is calling saying, "Hey, man, we got to extend. Oh, you got another 5% fee on you," like all this stuff. So, um, you know, I will say that it's been capital. If you are a person with capital out there, whether you're an LP investor or even an active investor with capital, um, real estate can be hard to produce cash flow. Um, it's great for passive cash flow, but it doesn't come right away. Not to all of us, and depending on the asset you're getting. Private capital and private lending have been a great way for me to create consistent cash flow, while also getting involved in deals that I wouldn't otherwise have gotten into. So it's a great way to use kind of equity that I built up over the years to get quick, consistent cash flow, while my real estate investments, take a year to turn profits and turn profitability and things like that.
John, I love that. And that's a great reminder for everyone. We always talk about things like other people's money and raising capital, but there's real people on the other end. There's real situations that you've got to manage and deal with, a reputation you got to build up yourself. So it takes time, and it helps to have the right people in your corner helping you navigate that as well. John, if folks want to learn more, they can check you out on your LinkedIn page, which we will include in the show notes. But right now, we're going to transition and go to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. John, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Well, God, I've had a lot of those failures. One of my biggest failures was my time at Apple. I had a big project, a store in San Francisco. We had some big sliding doors. They were 60,000 pound sliding glass doors. And the day of opening, hundreds of people standing outside, Tim Cook standing above me on the second level. We hit the button to open the door, and the door opened a crack, and it opened about an inch, and the sun came through, and it just stopped. And my boss is staring at me like, mouthing WTF. And I'm standing there like hitting buttons, and things are failing, and we're like, we had been weeks and weeks of testing. I mean, it had been my life for months. We had eventually had to default and get people into the side doors, and eventually we got the thing opening, and we had to figure out what went wrong, and we ultimately solved the problem and corrected it and got the system, fully functional. But it was the face of failure that really makes you realize, like, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you test something, things can still go wrong. At Apple, we went on to build 3 more of those same doors. Every single time they got better, they got more efficient, got faster, more elegant. You'll never see more than when the CEO of the largest company in the world is staring at you and you're like, oh crap. Yep. But I think it's just resilience, right? It's just knowing that things are going to break, things are not going to work. No matter how prepared you're going to be, something is going to come and knock you down. I got a 5.5-year-old, and I try to tell him every day, I want you to fail today. Get something wrong, mess something up, get right back up and go right back at it. If you are in real estate, you are going to get hit. I will tell you that. And please, it is not rosy, right? Something's going to happen. I have an assisted living facility. That first one ever that I bought last year. And in the first 2 months of this year, I had 20 residents pass away. Talk about hit the income, right? I told you can't predict income. It hurt. Took 2 months to resolve. But we had reserves. My partner and I forced him to make sure that we had excess reserves. We had a couple $100,000 in reserves just for situations like that. And sure, that wasn't what we thought our reserves are going to be used for. But we didn't miss anything. We didn't miss payroll. We didn't miss expenses. And we also did not miss distributions to our investors. So preparation is what keeps the best people and the ones that are still survive.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
Digital or mobile resource.
Website and app, anything you use?
I go to Fred, which is the Federal Reserve, to look at data, look at trending data. And I go look at the different things, right? Auto loan defaults, things like that. I talked about that earlier in the show, right? Look for the different indicators. Don't look for the mainstream news. So I go look at data and I look for, like, where are auto loans defaulting? What are other defaults? What are foreclosure defaults happening, right? And an interesting thing, when people start foreclosing on homes, this might sound weird, but it means they're most likely moving to rentals. And so, sometimes one person's pain or one industry's pain is a benefit of another industry. But it can also be signs of, well, if there's a lot of these things happening, could defaults start coming to my property? Could late rent payments start coming to me, right? Remember I talked about people pay car payments first, then they pay food, right? Then they pay rent. So know these numbers, see these things, read them before you hear them on the news, because then you are preparing yourself. Credit card debt is the highest it has ever been in our country, ever. Auto loans are higher than they were in 2008.
There you go. Pay attention to the Fed. All right. Give me a book that you've recommended most in the last year.
I'm going to hold on. Let me just read it because it's sitting on there's a book called It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moen. And it's really about that, just, if you're going to go out and do something, like, you got to be willing to put in the time. You got to be willing to put in the effort. I'm going to reference my son again. He's learning flag football and he gets mad when he doesn't score a touchdown. And I got to remind him, we watch football on the weekends. And I got to tell him, like, these players don't always move an inch either, move a yard either. I said, but look, every single one of these players gets back up and goes right back out and has the same objective, get to that end zone. So nobody that has been successful did it because it was easy.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I wake up at 3:30 every morning and I work out. It's the first thing I do. I exercise. That is my caffeine. I do drink coffee, probably because towards the end of the day, I'm tired from waking up so early. But I exercise first. I put myself first. I do try to read. I'm usually reading financial news or books and things like that. But exercise is a must for me every morning.
Give me your number one insight for investing in impact properties.
You have to, I think like everything else is, you have to have a purpose. Why are you doing this? And what is your objective? Everybody's got a different one, and there's so much out there, especially in impact. We can all want to do something different. It can be as simple as you are going to buy a duplex apartment in your neighborhood or in your city, and you want to make sure that the rents are not so high that you are excluding people that in that neighborhood that will never be able to rent there. That's impact. It might sound, you don't have to blast this stuff all over it and say, I'm green, I'm this. Go in there with purpose. And I promise you that if you go into something with purpose and you go out to serve whatever demographic that you plan on serving, that it will pay you back in spades.
You are up in Wisconsin. Give us your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Well, we're members at a little yacht club. I don't own a boat. I don't own a yacht. But for all of you people out there, I network. And so look into these places. But it's my favorite place because they don't mind my kids sitting at the bar with us. My son loves it because he can wear his pajamas there.
There you go. Go to the yacht club. I love it. John, great stuff. I love hearing about your journey as an engineer, starting off with the dream of building Ferraris and ultimately ended up, building Apple stores, and realizing, you're just working a lot of hours and getting burnt out and want to do something different. And that turns you into real estate. You open Blue Eye Capital, investing in these deals and growing up your portfolio and sharing some of the insights you've learned along the way on your journey, one of which is investing for impact. It's about more than just raising rents. It's about operations. It's about utility rates and understanding how to control the things you can control. That's so important as investors because we can't deal with, the economy as a whole or interest rates, but we can focus on the things that we can control. So a great reminder for all of us. Again, if you want to connect with John, check him out on his LinkedIn page, which we will put in our show notes as well. John, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.